Hello everyone. Jerry is back again with you today, and today is Sunday. I actually don't know what date it is. I think it's the 8th. But anyway, today I'm not going to talk about finances. Today I'm going to talk about Mother's Day today and what it means to me and what it should mean to everyone on this planet. But anyway, especially about my wife, Joy. So I'm only going to read actually one scripture today, which is quite a change for me, and it has to do with Proverbs 31:10 through 31. And it's talking about the virtuous wife. So let me read this right now to get started, and we'll talk more about that here when I get finished. Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night, and provides food for her household, and a portion for her maidservants. She considers a field and buys it. From her profits she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good. She stretches out her hand. She perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes them linen garments and sells them, and supplies sashes for the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is passing. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. There is almost everything in here reminds me of Joy, my wife. Almost everything. But the first thing that stands out to me is in verse 11, it says, the heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. This is where so many men have problems with sometimes, including myself. But is a woman's intuition turns out to be most of the time accurate. And I can think of, this has to do with finances, by the way, but I can think of 2 times in my life that if I had listened to Joy and what she told me at the time, I wouldn't have lost, thousands upon thousands of dollars in those 2 instances. So, listen to your wife when she's telling you about some things that you should not be doing. Verse 13, it says, she seeks wool and flax. Now, who does that remind you of? Joy seeks wool and flax and all kinds of fabric almost every day of her life. She has enough fabric in this house to start a fabric store if she wanted to, but Anyway, and she willingly works with her hands. There is another one that says she considers a field and buys it. This is in verse 16. She considers a field and buys it. From her profit she plants a vineyard. And what that means is that she has wisdom in both financial affairs and taking care of her household. She is able to do that. Joy is able to do that. She perceives that her merchandise is good. That's in verse 18. Which to me means that she has a lot of self-pride in what she does, and she is somewhat of a perfectionist. And that's joy to a T. She is a perfectionist. She will work night and day to get something straight. And I'm the same way, though. I'm not complaining about that. It's a great thing to have, but it can get to be a little troublesome sometimes. But she has a lot of pride in what she does, which she should. What she does is very good. In verse 19 it says, she stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. The distaff is a stick or something that you wind yarn or wool around when you are putting it on the spindle so it doesn't get all tangled up on the floor somewhere, but that's what that is. She has this little thing that's similar to that spins around and around and around and makes a ball of yarn that she uses to, crochet with. And then she puts it in a bowl and keeps it all organized so it doesn't get all messed up. She extends her hand to the poor. This is in verse 20. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. In other words, she's a giver. And Joy is so much of a giver. I mean, she's actually taught me a lot in life about that and the rewards of doing that. She makes tapestry for herself in verse 22. Her clothing is of fine linen and purple. Joy makes a ton of clothes for herself. Not only just to be having clothes, but she just loves doing it. Strength and honor are her clothing. It's another example. That's in verse 25. In verse 28 it says, 26, it says she opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. That fits Joy to a T also. She is a very wise person. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness, which is laziness basically. She's constantly doing something. I mean, constantly, day in and day out. And she watches definitely over the ways of her household, which right now I'm about the only one in her household, but she still watches over me. So her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. The problem with me is I don't praise her enough. She needs to be praised every day for what she does. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing. Well, that goes both ways. As we get older, things change. I mean, it's just a normal way of life. I mean, guys lose their hair, they get flabby here and there, they don't, have the muscle structure they used to have when they were 20 years old. Same thing happens to women, it's just things, you just age, but there's nothing wrong with aging, But then it goes on to say, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. That is one of the most important things that a woman could do, is fear the Lord. And let her have the fruit of her hands. She should be praised. She should be rewarded for all of her works. And God does that. God will do that. There are a couple things I wrote down today also about in Joy and I's life here. Things that I most often recall is how she has been a shield and a buckler for me and a guardian for me and a lot of different things for me that forget. I just don't think about it or praise her enough for it. But I'll give you a few examples here. In 2008, I was in Baptist Hospital. They were doing surgery on me. They were doing a laminectomy on my spine because the tumor that was on my spine was causing a lot of pain. And they were going in to bore out the holes where the nerves come out of the spine so that there wouldn't be any pressure on them. And they were also trying to get samples of the tissue of the tumor so they could find out what it was. But in that process, the needle that they used to get that biopsy broke in 2 different pieces. And it was inside my spinal column. And the most amazing thing about that was they came out of surgery and talked to Joy and told her that it would be okay if they just left those 2 pieces in there, that it wouldn't be any problem for me, and that they would not charge her or me for the surgery, which is insane, okay? Joy just, stood up to them and said, absolutely not. You're going back in there and you're going to remove those 2 pieces of needle out of his spine. And she's very forceful when she wants to be, which is good. But anyway, they did. They went back in there and they removed those 2 pieces of steel needle out of my spine, which I, to this day, could not even imagine leaving those there without causing me some problem. In 2008 and 2013, when I was going through those cancerous issues, she prayed for me every day. She got up with me and prayed with me in the mornings. It was early in the morning, like 5 or 5:30. Every morning she would get up and pray with me in agreement. And those were the most trying times of my life, I'll be honest with you. And I was healed of that whole process simply because of all that. And I give her honor and glory and praise for that. She also keeps me from making some pretty dumb financial moves, and also some dumb health moves sometimes in my life. If I had listened to her, like I said earlier, on a couple things that I did financially, I would have been much, much, much better off financially, because of it. But I didn't. She also caused me to actually have the opportunity to be on Shine, which is this channel that she started, to be able to do what I'm doing today, to, in a way, minister to the people that follow us on Shine, to be able to publicly relate to you, the viewers, the situations in my life that, in our lives basically, that reflect the Spirit of God and how God has blessed us, and only through obedience to His word. All these types of things that, enable me to do these things right now on Shine is because Joy started that channel. And if it weren't for her, I never would have been on YouTube. I never would be doing this, okay? I mean, I would have enjoyed the blessings, but I never would have been able to pass it on to others to help them and to do what the Lord actually wants me to do, okay, in a meaningful way. So I give her praise for that too. Because personally, I wouldn't have started a YouTube channel, because it's probably the farthest thing from my mind to do something like that. But here I am doing this, and it's only because of Joy. She keeps me from being the biggest hoarder and the most disorganized human on earth. I have a tendency to hoard things, okay? My barn kind of represents that. But I always keep things, for someday I may use it, or someday I may do this, or someday I may do that, or whatever. In my defense, sometimes that has occurred, but very, very, very rarely does that occur. So I end up having to go through it every once in a while and clean the whole mess up and get rid of it all. And it keeps me from being such a hoarder like that. I also love her for the fact that I need someone to agree with me or disagree with me on decisions that I make. Because as time has gone on, I have found that you have to be in agreement with your wife if you expect to be rewarded by God for what you're doing. And if you're not in agreement, that creates a lot of problems. Like I told you before, the 2 times I lost thousands and thousands of dollars because of not being in agreement with her. And so every decision that we make in our lives has to be substantiated by agreement with myself and Joy. If we're not in agreement over something, I don't do it. So even God talks about that when he says, if any 2 of you shall agree as to touching anything on this earth, then my Father which is in heaven shall grant that unto you. So he even tells you to be in agreement. If any 2 of you or more are in agreement, that's what he said. She's also, Joy's one of the best cooks and housekeepers in the world. I mean, we have a beautiful home here, and it is immaculate as far as cleanliness. And another way she helps me, because I have a tendency to take off my shoes and toss them somewhere, or come into the house with sometimes dirty feet when I shouldn't be doing that. And so she sets me straight so that I, keep the house clean. She always, this is another thing that I love about her, she always stands by me regardless of the circumstances. In other words, she doesn't run me down. She doesn't do anything like that. More than that, she praises me a lot. Okay? And that helps lift me up, helps build me up, and give me confidence. So I just love her for that too. Now don't get me wrong, we have our disagreements from time to time. Every husband and wife has disagreements. But regardless of that, it's for our own good, and we learn from it, and we go on. And I just want to say publicly, happy Mother's Day to my wife, Joy. And I love you very much. And with that, I'm going to close. And next week, I will talk some more about finances, which I started several weeks ago, but I've had a couple of interruptions. But next week, I'll get back on that again, and we'll try and finish that out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So, mothers, have a blessed Mother's Day, and God bless you all, and I will see you next Sunday.